Good morning, everybody. I was going to read on this Saturday morning, uh, 8 a.m. Central Time. This is Charles Bridges' commentary on Proverbs. Just going to read the introduction and hopefully, possibly get into chapter one. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right. So, Charles Bridges, Banner of Truth, book on Proverbs. This book was first published in 1846. It says, proverbial teaching is one of the most ancient forms of instruction. It was well adapted to the rudeness and simplicity of the first ages, when books were few and philosophy little understood. The mind, unpracticed to show process of reasoning, would be much more easily arrested by terse sentences, expressing a striking sentiment in the fewest words. The wise man himself has given the best definition of these uh, sententious maxims. Their elegance he describes under figure of, quote, apples of gold in pictures of silver. Uh, their force and permanent impression are, quote, as goads and nails fastened by the master of assemblies, driven closely home to the heart and conscience and fastened in the memories by the appointed instructor of the people. The antiquity of this teaching was recognized in the church even before the age of Solomon. Classic annals have recorded aphorisms similarly constructed from men of wisdom. All of these, however, were of a later date. Some possibly might be dim scintillations, scintillations from this fountain light, so that the capital K, king of Israel, was, as an old expositor has remarked, quote, the disciple of none, but the instructor of them all, end quote. Indeed, his mind largely dealt in this intellectual exercise. Quote, he spake 3,000 proverbs, First Kings 4:32. And from this valuable mass of thought, he was directed under divine inspiration to, quote, set in order, and, quote, a collection for the instruction of the church to the end time. Possibly, some would rather have desired the preservation of his discourse on natural history than on practical wisdom. But the sovereign discrimination shows that real intent of the scriptures not to teach philosophy, but religion, not to make men of science, but men of sound godliness. Nice. All competent judges will admit this book to be eminently fitted for this great end. What the Roman orator pronounced of uh, Thucydides, Thucydides applies far more truly to this king of Jerusalem. Quote, so full of matter that he comprised as many sentences as words, end quote. The wonderful book is indeed a mine of divine wisdom. The views of God are holy and reverential. The observation of human nature is minute and accurate. The rule of life and conduct is closely applied to make, quote, the man of God perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works, end quote. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. So that Mr. Scott well remarks, quote, we shall perceive the meaning and utility of the Proverbs in proportion to our experience in true religion, our acquaintance with our own hearts and with human nature, and the extent and accuracy of our observation on the character and affairs of men, end quote. Eusebius mentions the whole consent of the ancients, considering the capital B book of Proverbs to be, quote, wisdom fraught with every kind of virtue, end quote. Bishop Hall drew out mainly from it a complete system of quote unquote divine arts. And though the apostle, I'm sorry, I take that back. I wasn't ready for that. And though the apostate Julian scornfully preferred to it the sayings of heathen philosophy, yet the apostrophe of the son of Syriac was justly applied to its author. Quote, how wise wast thou in thy youth, and as a flood filled with understanding. Thy soul covered the whole earth, and thou fillest it with dark parables. As to its, quote, canonical authority, end quote, Michaelius well observes, quote, that no book of the Old Testament is so well ratified by the evidence of quotations. A few of the Jewish Talmudists appear to have expressed some doubt of its divine stamp, but upon grounds so futile that they were abandoned upon a more mature consideration. Ecclesiastical history has recorded only one dissentient from the judgment of the universal church, and that one condemned by her authoritative council. Whitsius has admirably refuted the neological cavils of his day. Nothing has been said from any quarter to weaken the unhesitating decision of our judgment, that the pen is that of the King of Israel, but the words are the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God. Some difference exists among expositors as to the exact divisions of the book. We have been led to divide it into three parts. In giving a more succinct account of these several parts, we shall avail ourselves largely, though necessarily in an abridged form, of the observations of a biblical scholar, not more remarkable for his profound learning than for his elegant taste. The first part, all agree, extends from the opening of the work to the close of the ninth chapter. It is, as Dr. Good observes, chiefly confined to the conduct of early life. All the most formidable dangers to which this season is exposed, and, quote, the sins which most easily beset us, or beset it, end quote, are painted with the hand of a master. And while the progress and issues of vice are exhibited under a variety of the most striking delineations and metaphors, in their utmost deformity and horror, all the beauties of language and all the force of eloquence are poured forth in the diversified form of earnest expostulation, insinuating tenderness, co- uh, captivating argument, and sublime allegory, to win the ingenious youth to virtue and piety, and to fix him in a steady pursuit of his duties towards God and man. Virtue is pronounced in the very outset to be essential wisdom, and vice or wickedness essential folly. The only wise man, therefore, is declared to be truly good and virtuous, or he that fears God and reverences his law, while the man of vice and wickedness is a fool, a stubborn or perverse wretch, and an abomination to Jehovah. Wisdom is hence allegorized as a tree of life, yielding delicious shade, fruit, and protection to those that approach her branches, throwing a garland of honor around their shoulders and decorating their heads with a graceful chaplet, more precious than rubies. She is a sage and eloquent monitor, lifting up her warning voice at the gates and in the squares of the city, denouncing to the young the snares and dangers to which they are exposed, and exhorting them to abandon, quote, the way of the wicked, which is as darkness, end quote, for the path of the just, which is, quote, as the brightening dawn advancing and brightening to perfect day, end quote. The second part commences at the opening of the 10th chapter. As is obvious from the introductory clause, the style and manner of the second part are as different as possible from those of the first. It is evidently designed for the use of persons advanced from the state of youth to that of manhood, while in the preceding, addressed to the young, the richest ornaments of the fancy are made choice of to captivate their attention and allure them to a right practice. In the present, all is business and activity, brevity, continuity, and terseness. Every thought, though as highly polished, is at the same time as compressed as possible, and the writer, thoroughly aware of the value of every moment of time at this important period, lays down a complete series of short rules of life and concentrates the most momentous precepts into the narrowest compass. The former appeals to the imagination, the latter to the judgment. The one exhibits all the genius of poetry, the latter all the art of composition, and hence the general matter is rendered as attractive in the one instance as in the other. Quote, the great object in each of the proverbs of the present part is to enforce a moral principle in words so few that they may be easily learnt, and so curiously selected and arranged that they may strike and fix the attention instantaneously, while to prevent the mind from becoming fatigued by a long series of detached sentences, they are perpetually diversified by the changes of style and figure. Sometimes the style is rendered striking by its peculiar simplicity or the familiarity of its illustration, sometimes by the grandeur of loftiness of the simile. Sorry, sometimes by the grandeur or loftiness of the simile employed on the occasion, sometimes by an enigmatical obscurity, which rouses the curiosity very frequently by a strong and catching antithesis, occasionally by a playful iteration of the same word, and in numerous instances by the elegant pleonasms or the expansion of a single or common idea by a luxuriance of agreeable words. The third part. The third part we can see to comprise the last 7 chapters. The first 5 were written by Solomon and edited some centuries after by the royal scribes in the reign of Hezekiah. The 2 last were written by separate hands, but preserved by divine care, and altogether worthy of the place they hold in the inspired canon. The time when this book was written is a matter of some uncertainty. We cannot doubt, but its contents were a part of, quote, the 3,000 Proverbs, end quote, which, quote, he spake, end quote, before his most lamentable fall. 1 Kings 11:32. They were therefore the exercise of his vast and comprehensive mind under the full influence of his divine wisdom. They might, however, as many judicious critics have thought, have been set in order in their present form at a period subsequent to that afflictive event. Both parts of this hypothesis read a most solemn practical lesson. Do we see, quote, outlandish women causing him to sin, end quote, Nehemiah 13:26? This, quote, beloved of his God, end quote, falling himself into the snare, which he so minutely described, and against which he so earnestly and repeatedly warned. Amanda White, hey, Nathalie, and Stevens' house burnt down last night. They were camping. No one was home, but they lost everything. Are you serious? What in the world? That is crazy. That is so crazy and scary. I have not heard. Well, I know in the immediate, I can open the Hope Center today if they need to come and load up on a whole new wardrobe. If you want to tell them that, I didn't know. So yeah, Amanda, let them know, and I'll call them as soon as I get done this recording. But yeah, text them, call them, say, hey, just found out. Yeah, let them know that we will. You know, I can let them into the Hope Center today. Oh, do they need a house? I guess I could let them live in the greenhouse. Do you want me to let them live in the greenhouse? All right. Let me let them know I can put them up in the greenhouse. Yeah. So everyone, so a family that we're friends with, house burned down. I'm reading Proverbs by Charles Bridges. All right. Actually, I'm going to end the reading right now and I'm going to see if they need that house. All right, cool. All right. Thanks so much, Amanda. I'm going to end the reading. I'm going to call them now. Okay. YouTube, sorry, I got to go. Boom.